Salve Discipoli, and welcome to the final review for verbs. Okay, today is Thursday. Today is day 2 of our review, and tomorrow we're going to have one more day of review, and then our final exam is going to be on Tuesday. Okay, again, stay posted for what we're going to be doing for that. I'll let you know as soon as I figure that out. Also, as a heads up, I might pause randomly in the middle of this video because it is mad windy where I am. Okay, so I don't want to, I'll speak louder so you can hear me better, but just as a heads up, that's something that might occur. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is verb characteristics. Now, remember from yesterday's review that nouns have 3 characteristics. Okay, those are gender, number, and case. Okay, so those are, when you're asked to parse a noun, these are the 3 pieces of information that you're going to give me. All right, now with verbs, okay, there are 3 characteristics as well. Okay, there's person, there's number, and there's tense. Okay, now the only one that those 2 things have in common, both verbs and nouns rather, is number. Okay, person and tense are the 2 separate things. 2 different things rather. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to break down what each thing is so that you have a clearer understanding of what we're working with. Okay, so the first characteristic of a verb is person. Okay, and person refers to who is doing the action of the verb. Okay, now our options for person are first person. Okay, and first person is I or we. Okay, right? Because think of it this way: if you're included in a group, or if it's you, right? You're first, like you're in the first person, like it's your experience. You're talking. Okay, it's I, first person. Right. Second person is you or you all. Okay, right? So you as the speaker are talking to somebody else. Okay, so that's one step away from yourself. So that's second person. All right, and finally you've got third person, which is he or she or it or they. All right, now if you think about it, you as the first person are talking about some guy over there, right? Somebody else. You're not talking to him, right? He's even further than that. He's he, she, it, or they. So like if I were to say, he, like Mr. Clemens, that guy over there, right? As opposed to you, the student, you're a little closer to me because I'm speaking to you, okay? And then I, of course, am myself, can't get any closer than that, so that's first person. Remember the chant. I'm number 1, 2 is you, 3 is he, she, or it, okay? And that's how you remember what person is, okay? Next. Number refers to how many are doing the action of the verb. Okay, similarly to nouns, how many nouns are there, right? Okay, so our choices are singular, which is one person doing the action of the verb, and plural, which is more than one person doing the action of the verb. Okay, so in English, a singular example would be I eat, or you walk, or he sits. All right. In English, an example of plural would be we go shopping. Another example would be y'all do the homework. A third example would be they chat. All right. So you see how in the singular examples there's one person, and in the plural examples there's more than one person doing the action of the verb. Okay. Now, tense. Okay. Tense is time. Tense is time. Remember that. Okay. Tense simply refers to when the action of the verb is taking place. Okay. Now, in Latin, please recall that there are 2 verb systems. All right. The first verb system is the present verb system. Okay, and there are 3 tenses included in the present verb system. Those tenses are the present, the imperfect, and the future tense. Okay, the second verb system is known as the perfect verb system, and there are 3 tenses included in that system. All right, there's the perfect, the pluperfect, and the future perfect. Okay, each tense has its own specific set of endings, which we're going to go over. Okay, but just to kind of answer, a couple of you have asked this question already. Don't worry about the pluperfect and the future perfect. Just know that they exist and know that they are part of the perfect verb system. Okay, but for our sake, the only verb tenses I'm requiring for you to know for this final exam are the present, imperfect, future, and perfect. Okay, because that's what we went over. Next year, you should be learning about the pluperfect. Okay, and I believe they also introduce the future tense and the imperfect tense in the textbook. So you'll get experience with that way. Okay, so stay tuned. Now, person, number, and tense, those 3 characteristics of verbs can be seen plotted out in the chart of endings. Okay, and the way I'm going to do it, right, notice that there are 2 verb systems, so I'm going to systematically break it up. I'm going to give you these endings of the present verb system, and then I'm going to give you the endings of the perfect verb system. I'm not going to worry about the pluperfect or the future perfect right now because I'm not requiring for you to know those. Okay. Hang on, it's a little breezy. We're in a wind tunnel. Okay. Now, if you recall, the present system includes the present tense, the imperfect tense, and the future tense. Okay, and the endings go as follows. All right, oh, and also, if you notice, so you've got the tense above. Okay, so that means you've got 4 separate charts. I'm sorry, I can't count. 3 separate charts, 3 separate types of endings that we can have here. Okay, in addition to that, please note, check it out. You've got 2 columns, singular and plural, for each. Okay, and in addition to that, right, you've got first person, second person, and third person. Remember, I'm number 1, 2 is you, 3 is he, she, or it. Okay, so let's go over what those endings are. Okay. O, S, T, mus, tis, and nt. Okay, we've got our imperfect endings, which are bam, bas, and bat, bamus, batis, and bant. And we've got our future tense endings, bo, bis, bit, bimus, bitis, and bunt. All right, so those are the endings in the present system. Now, moving on. Oh, okay, so how do we read this chart, right? So let's say we see the ending bam on the back of a verb, okay? So if you were to parse that for me, you would say, okay, so that's first person, singular, imperfect, okay? See that? You've given me the tense, you've given me the number, and you've given me the person, right? Person, number, tense. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, let's go over the perfect system. That's a separate verb system, and that, remember, includes the tenses of the perfect, the pluperfect, and the future perfect. Okay, now, the endings for those are a little bit different. Okay, they're e, isti, it, imus, istis, and erunt. Okay, now, another example of this, if I were to ask you what's the third person singular of the perfect tense, you would read the chart this way. Okay, so third person singular of the perfect tense, all right, that's eat or it, right? Okay. Another example, if I were to ask you what's the perfect tense second person plural, all right, so second person plural perfect tense, that leads us to istis. Okay, so that's how you read this chart. All right, and again, as I said before, don't worry about the endings for the pluperfect tense or the future perfect tense because we did not go over them this year, and I'm not expecting you to know them. Okay, but I will say that the perfect tense is actually one of the most important tenses in Latin. So when you get to reading upper level stuff like in Caesar or Virgil, for example, you're going to see the perfect tense the most out of all the tenses that are used. Okay, it's one of the most common ones. All right, because it's supernatural. And we'll see why when we talk about how to translate each form. But before we do that, let's go over some parsing verb examples. Okay, let me just draw your attention real quick. Over here, I've included some vocabulary help. Okay, these are all vocabulary words that are ones you should know except for this one. Okay, that one is just one I know and have for you. All right, and in addition to that, I've also included the verb endings over here, which you should also become very familiar with. All right, now, we have to break apart verbs because Latin is a lot, Wendy, Latin is a lot like puzzles. Okay, you have to not only figure out word order, but you have to figure out, like, break apart the word and see, like, what's going on within the word itself. Okay, so here I can tell you that verbs are pretty much made up of a stem and an ending. Okay, the stem you can find from the verbs, and the endings, obviously, you can find from the chart. Okay, so let's go through and talk about it. Okay, so amabo. All right, I'm going to draw a line down here so you can see. The stem is ama, and the ending is bo. So let's figure out where those come from. Okay, so ama comes from amo, amare, amawi, amatum, to love. Okay, so that's that. But the ending is bo. So if we were to parse this, okay, let's find bo in our chart. All right, it's right here. So let's give all the things. Remember, we want person, number, and tense. Okay, so this is the future tense. Okay, what else? It is first person and singular. Okay, so those are the three characteristics of that particular verb. All right, so we've just successfully parsed amabo. Next, sedet. Okay, we're going to draw a line here. Our ending is T. Okay, now, T in our chart is right here. So let's give the tense, the person, and the number. The tense is present. Okay, so this is present tense. All right, this is third person. And it is singular. Okay, and yes, you may abbreviate when writing these out, excuse me. Okay, next, I'm going to draw the line here. Ora is your stem. Vamos is your ending. And vamos is right here. Okay, vamos, remember, I want the tense, the person, and the number. Well, it falls in the imperfect chart, so this is imperfect. It's first person, and it's plural. Okay? So that's that. Next, we've got cantant. All right, canta is your stem, and nt is your ending. All right, and nt is right here in our verb endings chart. Okay, now nt, remember, I want the tense, I want the person, and I want the number. Okay, so we're in the present tense. Okay, present, that's third person. Okay, and that's plural. All right, so just with that, just by parsing, you've given me a lot of information here to help me translate. Okay, and you'll see how we apply that later. Next, habitavit. Okay, I'm going to draw the line here. Habitav is your stem, and it is your ending. Okay, now where in our chart is it? It's right over here. Okay, now remember, we're going to parse this verb, so I want the person, I want the number, and I want the tense. All right? It's perfect, third person, and singular. All right, so we've just parsed that. Okay, next. Mittet. Okay. Mittere. All right. Now, these last two are a little tricky, okay, because both mittet and misit come from the same verb. It comes from mitto, mittere, misi, missum. All right, but they're both separate tenses. So let's see if you can see the difference. All right, mittet, the ending is t, whereas for misit, the ending is it. Okay, and that is due to, and the stems are different too. Okay, the stems come from two different principal parts. Okay, mittet, all right, the stem comes from mitto, mittere, and missit comes from misi. All right, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit, but for now, let's just parse. Okay, so if mittet ends in t, all right, that means it's present, third person, and singular. So we're going to write that. Okay, whereas it is over here. That's perfect, third person, and singular. Okay, so we've just parsed all of those verbs. And you should do that. That's common practice. You need to be doing that when you're translating Latin, okay? And it's only going to help you out later on, I promise. All right, now if you would like to pause the video at this point and work on the parsing verbs examples that I've provided for you to practice, you can do that now, or you can just save it all until the end and do it then, okay? But it's totally up to you. You need to submit these, right, so that I can see that you understand what we were talking about today. Okay, so that was just parsing. Now, parsing is important, but so is verb conjugations. Okay? Now, yesterday we were talking about nouns. Okay, now remember, nouns they belong to noun families. These noun families are known as declensions. Okay? Verbs do also have families too, but they're not called declensions. They're called conjugations. All right, now there are 5 noun declensions. There are only 4 conjugations in Latin, so there's less here. All right, let's go over this. Okay, so verb conjugations. Just like nouns, verbs have families too. Okay, verb families equal verb conjugations, just like I just told you. And I also told you that there are only 4 conjugations. Okay, so there's only 4 verb families. All right? Now, the way to tell the difference between them is by looking at the infinitive. Okay, long story short, if the infinitive ends in are, it's a first conjugation verb, meaning it belongs to the first conjugation, the first verb family. Okay, so first conjugation is are. Second conjugation, right, even though there's no long mark here, you can hear it in the way that we pronounce it. Videre. Okay, you hear how that, like if I were to say videre, it wouldn't have a long mark, but we say videre. Okay, and that will come with time and ease when you start reading Latin out loud a little bit more. Okay, but if it's got a long ere, that's second conjugation. Okay, that's long ere. Remember, long is strong here. Okay, now this one is exercere. Remember, I didn't say exercere, right, because that would mean there's a long mark there. It's exercere. So you hear how this is kind of short, right? So exercere with a short ere, that's third conjugation. Sorry, I forgot how to spell and write at the same time. Nice. Okay, so second conjugation is strong ere, third conjugation is short ere, and you should be able to hear the difference. Okay, some dictionaries will actually tell you which conjugation the verb is. So that's also super helpful in learning how to pronounce the Latin. Okay? Now, audire is an example of a fourth conjugation. Okay? The fourth verb family. Fourth conjugation is indicated by the infinitive ending in ire. Okay? So with nouns, you look at the genitive, and the genitive has the ending that tells you which declension a noun belongs to. All right? Well, verbs, you look at the infinitive, and the ending tells you which conjugation it belongs to. Okay? So this is kind of like a cheat sheet. All right? There's no review questions based on this, but I did want to bring it up because it was something that we have talked about this year. All right? So, how to conjugate verbs. How to conjugate a verb, rather. Okay, let me just remind you of the endings. Okay, remember there are two separate verb systems. There's the present verb system, including the present, imperfect, and future tenses. And then there's the perfect verb system, including the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. Okay, now as I said before, don't worry about pluperfect or the future perfect because we haven't learned those or covered them this year, but you will sometime in the future with Mr. Clemens. Okay, but the perfect tense I do expect you to know, and these are the endings for that. Okay, now, let's see what this means in action. The present system. Okay, as we said before, the present system includes the present, the imperfect, and the future. Okay, so this is a step-by-step, stopping for the wind. This is a step-by-step on how to conjugate a verb in either the present tense, the imperfect tense, or the future tense. Okay, so step 1, you got to find the infinitive. All right, the infinitive is the second principal part. Step 2, pop off the RE to get the stem of the verb. Okay. Step 3, add your appropriate endings. Okay. For my third graders, I actually have a really dumb song to help you remember what to do. Okay, and it's super embarrassing, but I'm going to sing it anyway. Okay. You go to the second principal part, the infinitive that ends in RE. You drop the RE and left with me is the stem of the verb, to the tune of the Macarena, of course. Okay, so that's how you can remember what the steps are for conjugating. All right, so let's do an example here. Okay, let's use amo, amare, amawi, amatum. Now, let's pick a tense randomly. Let's do the future tense. Okay, now remember the future tense endings are bo, bis, bit, bimus, bitus, and bunt. All right, so let's find our verb stem first. Okay, what do? I find the infinitive. The infinitive is amare. Okay, so you go to the second principal part, the infinitive that ends in RE. You drop the RE and left with me is the stem of the verb. Yeah, to the tune of the Macarena. So cool. Wow. All right, so for this, now we've got our stem, ama. Now let's add our future tense endings. Okay, let's add your appropriate endings, and because we're doing it in the future tense, we gotta use the future endings. Okay, so ama bo, ama bis, ama bit, ama bimus, whoops, can't spell, sorry, ama bitis, shoot, ama bunt. Okay? All right, now just quick side note. No, actually, we're not going to talk about that now. All right. Now, conjugating, that's just the present system. Conjugating in the perfect system is slightly different. The perfect system includes the perfect, the pluperfect, and the future perfect tenses. All right, so the steps are slightly different for conjugating in this verb system. Okay, step 1. You have to find the perfect principal part, which is the third principal part. Okay. Step 2, you pop off the I to get the stem of the verb. And then step 3, you add your appropriate endings. And the appropriate endings can only be either perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect. Okay, but since we haven't learned these yet, all right, we're not going to do those. So let's conjugate amo, amare in the perfect tense. Okay, so step 1, find the perfect principal part. That's the third, whoopsie daisy, the third principal part right here. Okay, you drop the I and you're left with the verb stem, amav. Okay, now let's use our stem and add our perfect endings. We, wisty, wit, wimmus, wistis. Shoot. Sorry. And I'm going to just zoom in here because I can't write right now. Werunt. Okay, so it's just amav verse plus I isti it, imus istis, and erunt. Okay? So those are the two verb systems and how you conjugate in each. Now, I'm going to do an example, and I'm going to conjugate a verb in full. Remember, when you conjugate, you list out, they call these verb synopses. Okay, and verb synopses are when you list a verb with, in all of the possible tenses, okay, with all the possible meanings, all right? And Mr. Clements actually is a huge stickler for those, and he really loves having students do them. So the sooner you get on board with that, the better. So, now, we're going to conjugate a verb. The verb is maneo manere, mansi mansos, to remain. Okay, now in this slide, we're going to do it in the present tense. Okay, now remember, the present tense belongs to the present system. So we're going to use, let me just erase this. Present uses the present system. Okay, so we're going to use these steps, all right? You go to the second principal part, the infinitive that ends in re. You drop the re and left with me is the stem of the verb to the Macarena. Okay, so your verb stem is mane. All right, but there's a slight catch here. Okay, I can't say, all right, I can't just add an O here. Okay, I can't just write that, right? They've given you the first one in the present tense. Whoops. Okay, so you're just going to rewrite maneo, because this means I remain, okay, and that's in the present tense. So, the first one is maneo, I remain. Now we can use our stem and add our present tense endings. Okay, manes, meaning you remain. Manet, he, she, or it remains. Manemus, we remain. Manetis, y'all remain. And manent, they remain. Okay, now remember, or please note at least, I put the form and the translation for each. Okay, so that's what I'm expecting for you to do when you conjugate a verb as well. All right, so we just did it in the present tense. Now we're going to do it in the imperfect tense. And remember, the imperfect tense is part of the present system, so we're going to use these steps. Okay, go to the second principal part, the infinitive that ends in re. Drop the re and left with me is the stem of the verb. Okay, cool. So now we've got our stem, and we add our imperfect endings, because that's what we're being asked to do, see? Okay, so mane bam, I was remaining. Mane bas, you were remaining. Mane bat, he, she, or it was remaining. Mane bamos, we were remaining. Mane batis, y'all were remaining. And mane bant, they were remaining. Okay, remember, what kind of sheep go ba? Imperfect sheep. Okay, because there's a ba in each of the forms. All right, and we call the imperfect tense the wasing wering, because there's a was or a were-ing in each translation. You heard? Okay? So that's that. Now, two more tenses to go. We're almost done. All right. Now, mane o manere in the future tense, okay, is, remember, the future tense is still part of the present system. So we're going to still use these conjugating steps. Okay, you go to the second principal part, the infinitive that ends in re. Drop the re, and left with me is a stem of the verb. Okay, so we've got our stem. Now let's add our appropriate future tense endings. Okay, so you've got manebo, I will remain. Manebis, you will remain. Manebit, he, she, or it will remain. Manebimus, we will remain. Manebitis, y'all will remain. And manebunt, they will remain. Okay, now remember, this is just the simple future tense, but you have to include a will in all of your translations. Okay, it's just similar to the English will. All right, it hasn't happened yet, it's the future. Okay, and finally, we've got one more to do. All right, we're going to conjugate mane o manere, the same verb, in the perfect tense. Okay, but the perfect tense, let me remind you, comes from the perfect system. So we're going to need these steps. All right, step 1, find the perfect principal part, which is the third principal part. Pop off the I to get the stem, and then you add your appropriate tense endings. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so the third principal part is not manere. Okay, that's the second principal part. It's mansi. Okay, in mansi, you pop off the I, all right, and then you add your tense endings. Okay, so, whoops, I don't need to write it. Mansi, I remained. Mansisti, you remained. Mansit, he, she, or it remained. Mansimus, we remained. Mansistis, y'all remained. And manserunt, they remained. Okay? Now the perfect tense is very similar to English's simple past. All right? It's a type of past tense, and you're going to translate it with an ed. All right? I blanked. The action is perfect. It's complete. All right? Remember that lesson from day 3 of our distance learning where I taught you the perfect tense, and I said that the imperfect is not complete, right? I was remaining. I might still be remaining, who knows? Okay, but if I say I remained, right, the remaining is done. Okay, so it's perfect versus imperfect, all right? Complete versus not yet complete, continuous. All right, so that's that. So that's it for the verb review. Now, what I'd like you to do for homework tonight is to do the practice problems. So for this part, I want you to parse these 10. All right, so give me the tense, number, and person of these. Okay, and just by doing that, look at the ending to figure it out. Okay, and practice problems. Please conjugate these 3 verbs with translation in the present, imperfect, future, and perfect tenses. Okay, so what we did with mane o manere, okay, you're going to do that, and that, and that, and that for each of these 3 verbs. Okay, it's a lot of work, I understand that, but please, you can even type it too. All right, but just be aware that your word processing is going to try to spell check you, so just be aware that that's something that'll happen. All right, again, please submit this work on Google Classroom, and as always, I'm going to post a question forum. Actually, it should be there for you already, where you can ask any questions that you're not sure about. All right, and students, feel free to answer other students. That's totally fine. But I will get back to each student individually, and if someone else answers your question, I'll double check it just to make sure it's the correct thing. Okay, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. All right, so that's it for today's review. We've got one more day of review ahead of us where we're going to put all this information together, and we should be good. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys soon. Malete, Discipoli.